Hello, and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Dog Trainer. This is part two for Ecollar and Reactivity FAQ. So I asked a question box on Instagram. If you haven't already listened, we have a part one. So go take a listen to that. And I asked, when it comes to the e-collar and reactivity, what are the things that you struggle with the most? And you all gave me so many things, a lot of similar struggles. So what I have done, if you can see, I've taken some notes, tried to get myself a little organized so that we can get to everything. Okay, so first, can you see, if you're watching, you could see Lucy on place. She's a little Frenchie that I'm working with. She's so cute. I totally get why people spoil their Frenchies because she's like a little froggy, piggy thing. She's adorable. But she's already come a long way. She was dropped off on Sunday, where she was very nervous of me and my husband, Bobby. She actually wanted to be closer to Bobby. But on the first day, so this is not something I shared on Instagram, she at first was like standoffish, but was kind of like watching us. And we just really, if you could see the video, I'm pointing to our living room. I was sitting in the chair over there. She was just sitting on the ground. A lot of times when dogs are dropped off for the board and train program, they're all over the place. So rarely does a dog just like sit. And she was kind of doing that. And so I was like, well, let's just kind of see, let's hang out for a second. I already got some before pictures of her. I just wanted to see how she'd do. It was kind of like getting to know her in a way. And I got a little feeling that she was kind of, a lot of times when dogs are, they just like sit and observe. I feel like it's a nervous thing usually, and it's probably not exactly how she is all the time. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. But sure enough, about 10 minutes later, I went to go move and she started barking at me and went backwards and actually jumped on our couch, spilled my husband's coffee. And it was a whole thing. It wasn't that bad, but it was just, she didn't want me to come near her kind of a thing. So that's how we started, which kind of makes sense with one of the biggest issues that her owner is struggling with is when they have guests come over, she barks at them and she wants to nip. So one thing, and this is very similar to like that unpredictable, like, who are you moving around? And now I'm going to bark at you. You can see her. She's like, she likes to get on her back and show her belly. It's a slightly manipulative, sweet thing. But anyway, but so like her guest will be there and I don't remember who the family member was, but someone will be sitting on the couch and Lucy will be totally fine. And then he'll get up and move and she'll go to nip him. So it's a very like unpredictable thing. So one of the biggest things that we're really working on is place and solidifying that command. Recall is going to be super helpful. Things like down, because down on place is not place without your dog laying down. It's just not the same. You don't get as many benefits. Place is really nice when your dog is laying down on place, and that can really get them into that calm zone. And then getting her to walk nicely on leash, that kind of thing. Also, she has a bit of FOMO in her kennel. She lives with two other dogs. One of the other dogs I've actually trained. He's been through the board and train, so we're just kind of getting her up to speed with him. He was Oliver. So anyway, that's what's going on. She might pop up from a down, so I'll just kind of work through that a bit. But what was I going to say? I think I sprained my coccyx, like the bone or whatever that's like above your booty. So there's that, which is not ideal when you're working with dogs because it hurts kind of to bend over. I'm hoping it gets better. I don't know why I'm telling you this. But anyway, okay, let's dive in. As always, for my dad, a little ode to Joe Mangaskell, who loved his podcast. No, down. No, down. Good. So when I said no, I tapped on the e-collar. With her, I'm at 30, which is kind of on the higher end. She's a bit stubborn. She knows down. I know she knows down. So now we're holding her accountable for it. So each time I said no, I tapped, which I think this is actually probably helpful for you to see and hear in the podcast. Oh, what was I saying? For my dad, this is why I got back into the podcast because he loved his podcast so much. I've got my cup of Joe. I'll wait for you to get yours. All right, let's dive in. So this is I want it to be around 40 minutes. So let's see how we do. Okay, so again, when it comes to the e-collar and reactivity, what are the things that you're struggling with the most? And these are some of the big ones. So I've put them into chunks, subjects. So the first one is going to be timing. So timing is crucial when you're using the Ecollar for reactivity. It's timing and levels really. And when it comes to timing, I'm just going to go by each one that you said. And even if they're very similar, we're going to talk it through with a little answer and hopefully clear up some things based on what you're struggling with. So someone said, my timing is atrocious. I feel like I always miss the moment. Someone else said, knowing when to use it. Someone else said, being quick enough with the e-collar. Sometimes it's hard to tell if he's going to react before he's lost his mind. Okay, so let's talk about that one real quick. So usually when someone is saying their timing is off or they're not sure when to use the e-collar, this is probably because you're correcting for things before the reactivity. So again, this is something that I did like the first 3 years of working with dogs because I heard a trainer say it. I talked about this in part 1 if you want to go take a listen. And the thing that is helpful about that situation where you are using the e-collar to correct, or I like to think of it now like interrupt the excited mindset. So your dog sees a dog and gets amped up, and you want to use the e-collar to be like, hey, enough. But you're not saying that. You're just using the e-collar with a tap to interrupt that excitement so that then hopefully your dog doesn't react because it's like stopping a hamster on a wheel. This is just one of my favorite analogies because I'm so visual. You're stopping that excitement wheel, reactivity wheel. I don't know how to explain it, but I hope that makes sense. It's the precursor to the reactive moment. So you're trying to get ahead of the game and stop it before it spirals out. What happens with this is most owners underwhelm their dog. So that's number 1. Number 2 is you are overthinking things. So you are hesitating big time because you're like, well, I can't really tell if my dog, when should I actually be using the e-collar when I'm going after things before the reaction? What if my dog isn't going to react and then I still correct him and I feel bad for that? Where I think like for me as a trainer, a couple of things that I do when I'm going after the moments before a reactive outburst. So I'm looking for little tells, ears perking up, stiff body language, maybe a little bit of whining or popping out of heel. Again, so let me go ahead and say this. If you are hesitating with the e-collar for addressing things before the reactivity happens because you're trying to get ahead of it, what I want you to do is go after heel. Most of the time, dogs who are a bit more worked up when they're about to get reactive and you're trying to interrupt before the reactivity happens with the e-collar, your dog is probably being pushy with heel. You could always go after heel. It's a very clear thing that you know if your dog gets ahead of you, they're out of the heel position. So I want you to reset. What I'll usually do is turn back around, come back, hold them accountable for heel. And it's all about the level that you use. Okay, so that's 1. That's what I would probably recommend for most of you. If you find that you're using the e-collar for things before the reactivity because you're hoping to stop it before it gets out of hand, because you're probably underwhelming your dog with the level. So one thing that I heard a trainer say a while back that really did make a big difference for me, because I'm just like you, I just have more experience with dogs, but I've felt the way that you feel about the e-collar and addressing reactivity. One thing that he said was use meaningful levels for smaller moments. Or I think he said like higher levels for smaller moments. Now, the thing that is so helpful about this is because it kind of rewires how you think about these moments. Because most of you probably think, well, it's a small moment. It probably doesn't need to be a correction level. Where really what is happening, if you're hitting a wall where you feel like you're missing moments, you're overthinking, your dog isn't, taking you seriously, your dog is being pushy on the walk, and you're still struggling with reactivity, I want you to try this. I want you to look at the levels that you're using. So think back to your last walk. What level did you use to interrupt before the reactive moment happened? I want you to dial up a bit. Now I'm saying this a lot on this podcast because this is not dog training 101. This is e-collar and reactivity training. So you are at a point, I'm assuming, where you're using the e-collar to address the reactivity in an effective way. And I find that this is the missing piece for a lot of owners. You use the e-collar, you get into this training, and then you are struggling because of levels and timing. I've talked with owners who have been through board and trains and who have worked with great trainers, and it's just a mental thing. You get back home, you don't have your trainer with you, and you hesitate or you underwhelm with the e-collar because you feel bad, or a trainer, like I might see a moment and I know, okay, we need to dial up and follow through with a meaningful level for that small moment, because that small moment will make a huge difference when we walk past the dog, a couple blocks from now. Here's a good example. So I was working with, it was a dog, Peppermint. She is one of the most reactive dogs I have ever worked with. And this was, I feel like 3 years ago. She was a cute little pitty, similar coloring, I feel like, to Lucy, but super intense reactivity. So her owners did great with her. I went for a follow-up visit. She lived like an hour and a half away. This was like one of my training dogs that I was going to do whatever I needed to do to help the owners, because the owners were really awesome too. I'll never forget. It was one of the first times where an owner filled out the contact form. I remember I was at the beach with Bobby and I was like, oh my gosh, someone just filled out the contact form and said that they've been following on Instagram for a year and finally got the money to do the board and train program. That to me is like jackpot for a trainer. I know that the owners are invested. I know they've been following along, so they trust me. They totally get the process. I'm not going to have to talk them into anything. So I was just, I don't know. It's one of those like, how people have heart dogs? It was like one of those heart training dog situation owner things. So I think it was a year later, maybe, where they were struggling a bit in their apartment complex, and they were actually getting ready to move into an RV out in Arizona, I think. So they wanted to come by and see if I could help with some reactivity that was popping up. So we start walking. I have them holding Peppermint, and right away I can tell Peppermint's being pushy with heel. And it's not anything like super dramatic, but it's something that I notice where when you are working with your dog and your dog is reactive, which is AKA pushy behavior, heel is one of the easiest things that you can hold your dog accountable for. So this just speaks to the power of that. So we start walking, and sure enough, right away I start asking about levels. What levels are you using? They said around their apartment complex, I think around like 65, 70, something like that. So when we start walking, I have them bump up to, I think it was 85, 90. I don't really remember, but it was higher than they had been using, and I knew it was going to mean something to Peppermint. I think maybe I held the leash, because I always ask, would you rather me hold the leash and tell you exactly when I use the e-collar, or would you prefer that you walk her and I coach you on when to use the e-collar? She was struggling with dialing up because Peppermint was a very vocal dog, and we're going to talk some more about vocal stuff because I know a lot of you struggle with that and it can make things so much more challenging. So they wanted me to walk her. So I'm walking with her. I have it bumped up to that higher level because I'm going to have my husband come out with a dog. She's walking next to me. All of a sudden, she goes to dart across me to go sniff the grass, which is a big no-no for me because it's a small moment. But when I'm working with a dog who is reactive, that is a small moment worth addressing with a meaningful level. So I correct at that higher level. She gets back into heel. We start walking. And of course, after you correct, something that should be said, because you are going to be working with your dog and think you're doing something really bad, your dog is going to look a little nervous. Movement helps. Let's go. Keep moving. We turn back around. My husband brings out a dog, and she ignores the other dog. Not because I corrected with the e-collar for the reactivity. I corrected her with a meaningful level for the heel command. So again, small moment, meaningful level. So for you, this could look like maybe opening the front door. And if your dog is known to be pushy before you even leave your house, small moment, meaningful level. So again, I can't tell you what that level is, but reflect on your levels and dial up a bit. I'm telling you, the goal is that you don't have to use the e-collar as much. So that's why I'm encouraging you to dial up, because 99% of the time when I ask, what are you struggling with when it comes to the e-collar? It's levels. I think she's doing her froggy legs. Can you see her? She's so cute. So with Peppermint, that was a big moment. So after, I might have even after correcting for her trying to go sniff the grass, I think I handed the leash over to her owner. And because I really wanted her to get as much practice with Peppermint as possible. No. Do you see her? She was about to like get off of place. So I handed her off to her owner, and then Bobby came out with a dog, and Peppermint ignored our dog. So again, it just speaks to you probably are overlooking smaller moments that are worth addressing. Okay, so that's a little something to think about that I hope is a good example for you. There's one thing to tell you, it's another to quote unquote show you by, storytelling, I guess. Okay, let's see. Timing. I want to give him a chance to get it right, but he ends up reacting. So this is something where you might need to go to the other approach, which is correcting when your dog actually reacts. And again, with that, you will need a level that means something. And this is sometimes, I think, a trainer move. I think it because it's really hard for a lot of owners to dial up, where I also think a lot of you are struggling to the point where you're like, no, I'm ready. Let's do this. I just want to feel reassured that I'm doing the right thing. So if you keep missing moments and your dog is reacting, maybe what you should do is let your dog react, and that is when you correct. And it can really have a big effect. Where what tends to happen is it de-escalates your dog. I was just telling an owner yesterday in the owner coaching session, when you do that, you are correcting the behavior you don't want your dog to do. Doesn't that make sense? It makes so much sense to me when I heard this other trainer talking about it. And it's been a total game changer with training dogs that I've worked with. So that might be something you should try. The thing to keep in mind about that is it's all about the level. 35 is not going to do it. You are going to have to use a level that is more meaningful. Because if you think about when your dog actually reacts, it's a louder moment. So you need a quote unquote louder level. Otherwise, it won't help. So that's something to think about. The other thing is stop waiting for your dog to make a better decision initially. So if you find that every other time your dog ends up reacting, your dog is being pretty predictable. So what I want you to do is follow through with the e-collar to interrupt things before, even let's say if your dog wasn't going to react. Think of it like, this is what I like to tell owners and what I think of when I'm doing it. I'm setting the tone. I'm like, hey, we're not doing that anymore. And this is the biggest difference, I think, between trainers and owners. I know that that is really valuable. It's kind of like if, let's say I correct a dog for popping off of place, which would be a bit of a higher level. Then I want to correct for whining on place, but I don't want the level to be as high. You're doing good, but you're making a lot of noises. So if okay, so let's say on the walk, because this is, I think, more what a lot of you probably do and you're worried about. So if I tell an owner, let's say I'm at the go home session, all right, dial up because we see a dog. So I want us to have a bit more of a meaningful level to correct for any kind of pushy stuff so that your dog understands, hey, we're not doing that. And then when we pass that dog, we can dial it back down a bit to hold her accountable for heel, let's say. Because a lot of times your level will be up a bit higher for certain situations that are quote unquote louder moments when you are coming closer to a dog. And if dogs are your dog's trigger, then you want a level that's more meaningful for that moment. Then if you're walking around your neighborhood and there really are no distractions, you can dial back down to, I like to think of it as like whispering with the e-collar. But what if you forget to dial down and your dog is being a little bit pushy with heel? You tap, you think you're at that lower-ish level. You're not. Your dog goes, arr! And oh shit, I'm at that higher level that I was at before. Here's what usually happens. That level meant something to your dog. You probably won't have to use the e-collar as much on the walk anymore. I see it whenever this happens to me where I'm like, oh, dog probably didn't need that high of a level for that moment, but maybe they did. And maybe I was just underwhelming the dog. I find that happens a lot when it happens. And it's always hard though, when the dog vocalizes and you're like, oh no, like I really didn't need that level for that moment. But most of the time, dogs, it's like they needed it, but we didn't know that they needed it. So it was like a little accident that happened, but hey, they needed that level. Now I don't have to actually use the e-collar as much on the walk. Wow. So that kind of stuff can happen. No. But with the levels, where did I get to that? Oh, shoot. Timing, I want to give a chance to get rid. Well, okay, so let's start a new note. So with the timing. So I think for those of you who are hesitating, try following through next time. Because if you think of it, no, I don't like licking, dogs licking themselves. Because she's in the picture so I can see her. So I'm just going to feel like I can hear her licking. Anyway, okay, so those of you who are hesitating, but your dog is still reacting, I want you to just use the e-collar as a way to interrupt the excitement and set the tone for the rules. Because your dog is obviously showing you every other time or whatever that they are going to be pushy and do something that they shouldn't. So for the next 3 walks, I want you to follow through, pay attention to heel. You might be missing that where you're not holding your dog accountable for heel and letting your dog be pushy with the heel position. I see it all the time at the go home sessions that I do. So it's such a great example of this, where I always tell the owner, I'm going to be really nitpicky about heel with you, with your dog, because it's so important. And I know that dogs will push their owners when they get back home. But if you start to struggle with any kind of pushy stuff on the walk or any reactivity stuff, always come back to heel and being really strict with that position. Because it's something, this is the great thing about obedience commands. It helps us be really clear in moments when maybe it's hard to know how to add clarity to a situation, like what we're talking about. If you're unsure if you should correct, or what if my dog isn't going to react? I want to give him a chance to do better or whatever. You can always go after the heel position. But for you, if you're struggling with that and you're hesitating, try the next 3 walks following through and just think of it as you're setting the tone. It's just like, hey, remember, we're not doing that. Especially if you're walking past a dog, go ahead and follow through with a level with a tap on the e-collar, just as a way to set the tone. And I think you'll see a big difference. Okay, not correcting quickly enough or knowing if it's too late for a correction. Okay, so one thing I always like to tell owners is that if you've missed a moment and your dog is reacting, for me as a trainer, I could probably dial up to a level that means something in that moment to snap the dog out of it. But it could be like a change of 50 levels where most owners will not dial up that quickly. You'll probably dial up 10 or 15, and you're just going to keep chasing the excitement instead of actually stopping the reactivity. So what I want you to do is take it as a missed moment, move out of the situation. It will feel really messy. That's okay. I just want you to get out of the situation. Let's go. You can always correct for looking back. So sometimes I'll do that, especially when you're working with a reactive dog. You just want to get a dog moving forward. So when they go to look back, no, tap, let's go, movement. Now I want you to reflect on your levels so that you can reset and try again for the next time. Those of you who are struggling with reactivity consistently and you're really only doing the correcting before, so it's like correcting the intent before the reactivity. One, you can start to use more of a meaningful level. So that's one. Always reflect on your levels. If you've been using the same level over and over and over and expecting the same results, that's not helping. You're just nagging your dog. So I want you to dial up the next time initially. Don't start at a lower level. Go out on the walk with a meaningful level to either hold your dog accountable for heel or to follow through with the e-collar for a moment before a reactive moment usually happens with a more meaningful level. Because your dog is showing you time and time again, the level you're using might mean something, or you might think that that level's high. Your dog is showing you it's not high for me. Okay, so next time I want you to dial up and start the walk with a bit of a higher level, because that is something a trainer would do. So I'm trying to share with you things that I know trainers do, I know I do, and this is really what makes the biggest difference, and hopefully it reassures you that you can do this too, because you really can. Not correcting quickly enough. With the quickly enough thing, that's all about reflecting on what happened before. So if we remember, it's feedback, not a setback. There's always going to be messy moments for me as a trainer, for you as an owner. The biggest thing is you need to reflect on what happened and what levels did you use? Did you hesitate with following through with the e-collar and your dog reacted? Okay, great. The next time I want you to follow through. I want you to look at something like heel. I want you to pay attention to the smaller moments and follow through with a meaningful level. The higher levels are not just for the reactivity. It's also to be really clear for things that when your dog is being really pushy, smaller moments that can add up to the big reactive moment. So that's something else. Knowing if it's too late for a correction, I would say if your dog is reacting, move out of the situation. It's too late because most of you just won't dial up to a meaningful level and you'll just make the situation worse by, it's like adding fuel to the fire. If you just dial up by 10, tap, dial up by 5, tap, you're just chasing that excitement and you're just going to irritate your dog more. So move out of the situation. It's a missed moment. No big deal. You can try again next time. Okay. So I hope that that's helpful for timing stuff. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach me on Instagram at Walking Dog Training. Let me know you listened to this episode. Give me a little bit about your situation and I can try to help you as best I can. Okay, next section. A big thing a lot of you are struggling with is if you're using it correctly. So this is kind of similar to what we've been talking about, but probably a little different. So someone said, what is the purpose of using the e-collar to correct the actual reactivity or interrupt the intent before a reaction? So with this, it really depends on the dog. So the whole thing of correcting the intent before a reaction, I find works well for a lot of dogs if they're more on the mild side. If a dog is really intense and they just want to react, I find that correcting the actual reactivity is the most helpful. Then after you've done that, I find that like the reactive stuff still like fizzles to the top, but it's a bit more mild because now your dog understands if I react, it's uncomfortable. So now it's like the little things before. Excuse me. So then you would start to interrupt with the e-collar for the intent. So if you are doing the intent thing and you're using the e-collar to interrupt for things before, ears perked up, dog is really tense looking, some whiny stuff, and you want to say no to that with the e-collar before a reactive moment happens, and your dog is still reacting, it's the levels that you're using. You're underwhelming your dog, more than likely. The other thing could be you might need help from a trainer in person. I should say that because that's a really important piece of this. I'm a trainer who helps owners in person. A lot of you can do so much with your dogs on your own. It's okay if you need help. Take a look at I'll link it in the show notes. It's our Balanced Trainer directory, and there's so many trainers who have filled out the form on there, and I've added them on manually, by the way, because this was an idea I had when we went out west the first time with our dogs in the van, and like thinking of ideas for walking dog training, and the trainer directory was one of them. So I did that like a year later. It took a lot of time. My eyes went literally cross-eyed, but I think it's hopefully been helpful. So you can go and find a trainer in your area. And if you're a trainer, you can go and fill out the short form at the bottom and I can add you. It's not just for people I know. That is something also as an owner to take into consideration. I cannot recommend everyone on that list. I have very few trainer friends that I can actually recommend. Like the girls who have been to the Trainer in You seminar, I would recommend because I know them and we've gotten to know them through our week together, or my actual friends. So if you're curious about an area and you want to don't text me. Message me on Instagram and let me know, hey, do you know of anyone in this area? I can try. If not, I'll recommend you go look at the list. Start following them on Instagram, get a feel for them, reach out to them, see if you can do a consultation call or set up a virtual call and make sure they're the right fit. That's where you kind of have to figure things out, but hopefully it gives you a head start. Okay, but yes, if you're struggling a lot with correcting for things before a reaction happens, so you're trying to interrupt the intent before, then the next approach would be to correct the actual reactive moment. But again, I feel like I'm going to be a broken record, but I hope this is more helpful and reassuring and you can't hear it enough kind of a thing. Your level will need to be meaningful. So you always have to reflect on the levels you're using. This is just, let's say with Lucy, if she was reactive, Rolly's a good example. He was a reactive Frenchie I worked with. But if she was reactive and I wanted to follow through with the e-collar to correct the actual reactivity, which is what I would do, her level would probably be about a 45 to start with, where a lot of you, I find, you way underwhelm your dogs. So this is a Frenchie. If it was Reese, the German Shepherd who I worked with, who's coming back next month for boarding, I'm so excited, from Georgia, but she was super intense with her reactivity. The level I used to correct her reactive moment was 90 to 100 because she's a bigger dog and way more intense. It's just so different with smaller dogs, bigger dogs, but still smaller dogs, they can be really intense with their reactivity. But I think a lot of you would probably maybe go 20 levels above your dog's working level or something, where if you reflect on the level and you notice, okay, that didn't work, maybe reach out to me for a virtual session so we can talk it through. It's $65, 30 minutes. It's a great way to feel reassured. We can talk through levels, or watch some of my highlights with dogs I've worked with, especially the reactive ones. There's a list in, I think, the Ecollar Starter cheat sheets and the Ecollar Starter guide, where there's some reactive dog highlights to go and reference, where I talk about the levels. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. Oops. Okay, but the purpose, which one to use, it really depends on the dog and their intensity when it comes to reactivity. So if you start, I always say you can start with correcting for things before the reactive moment, because I feel like that's a little bit easier for owners. I think it's hard for a lot of you to think about using the e-collar when your dog is actually reacting, because you're going to have to use a higher level than you've probably used before. I know that can be really intimidating. So if you start with the things before, start to see, how does your dog respond? Are you underwhelming your dog? Does your dog keep reacting? Dial up and try again next time. Set up a virtual coaching call so we can talk it through and I can better coach you. But it's all about trying and seeing what works and reflecting, because it's feedback, not a setback. Curbing the reaction before, and then when it happens, especially when we see another dog coming for a long time, curbing the reaction before. So instead of curbing the reaction, I would start to look at it as, how can I stop the reaction? So curbing is like, well, I hope it doesn't happen, and my dog really wants to react, but let's try to avoid it. How about correcting the reactivity to stop it? I think that would solve a lot of your problems. So once you do that, and it kind of sounds like if your dog is reacting or like loading up when they see a dog coming, again, it's just like with peppermint. Going after a smaller moment with a more meaningful level was really helpful. Maybe you should do something like that. Maybe your dog is being really pushy with heel, or you've underwhelmed with the levels, or maybe you should go after correcting when your dog actually reacts and then start to go after the little things afterward. But again, it's all about levels. So if that's something that you're struggling with, I would just reassess. What have you been doing? So if that's not working, let's reassess, let's reevaluate. What levels are you using? Should you dial up the next time? What is your timing like? Have you been doing things before and your dog is just like, oh, I don't really care? Have you actually addressed the reactivity with a meaningful level? I'm going to assume most of you have not done that, so that's something you could try. I know it's scary, but I'm telling you, and I'm hoping that this reassures you, that it is a total game changer when it comes to reactivity. So there's that. Okay. Am I using it correctly in the moment of a reaction and using the e-collar correctly, or if at all? Well, this is a lot of things. So one, we do have a couple of other episodes that are all about e-collar and reactivity, how to address reactivity with the e-collar. Go and listen to that episode, because we go into detail about the things I'm talking about. But I think that a lot of you really struggle with, this is a tool that can be unpleasant for sure for our dogs, and you don't want to use it the wrong way. You don't want to correct when you shouldn't, because you think that that's going to make your dog more fearful or more reactive, or just make it worse. So I want you to start thinking about the e-collar in a different way and how you use it. The levels, your timing, and which approach you're going to use to correct the actual reactivity or the moments before. And if you're hesitating, to follow through with the e-collar is a way to set the tone, just to be like, hey, we're not doing that. Knock it off. So it's not necessarily that you're using it because your dog was going to react. We can't read the future, but you know your dog. Your dog has probably been showing you time and time again, I'm probably going to react to this Cocker Spaniel that's walking by. So if you follow through with a tap on the e-collar with a meaningful level, just to remind your dog, hey, snap out of it. Or if you're using the e-collar to interrupt, your dog is getting a little bit worked up, you're snapping your dog out of that. So it's also how you view using the e-collar. It's not that you're punishing your dog for any of that stuff. It's more just you need a tool to be hey, because a lot of you, I hear it all the time, and I work with dogs all the time who care less if I have a super high value treat or If I was holding some super yummy food, they want to react more than anything. So the e-collar is a way for us to kind of break through the noise and add some clarity to a situation, but it's all about the level that you use. This is why I recommend the e-collar with 100 levels, so that which can be intimidating, but also really helpful because you have a lot of room to find a level that's meaningful. If you've been using level 35, your dog is showing you over and over that 35 is not meaningful. So now you have to get over the mental hump of feeling like 35 is high. Why can't my dog just get it at 35? And I'm telling you, I've been there and I totally get it. I empathize with you. I feel this a lot with different dogs. But I also know based on experience that led to me nagging dogs for much longer, which I don't think is helpful for the process. But you kind of have to learn that to realize, oh, well, nagging is not helpful. Dialing up makes a huge difference. And then we can start to work through all the other little things and I can show my dog what I want them to do instead. But I have to address the big reactive moment and say no to that behavior so I can say yes to a lot of other things. Okay, let's see. Am I using it correctly? When to tap on the buttons due to panic and or judgment from those around me. So with that, and you might have like a vocal dog. So if your dog or something, makes a noise, that can always make us feel like everyone's watching us and they think that we're awful, terrible human beings, which by the way, I think most people assume that dogs are just vocal in general. So a dog reacting on the walk is probably very normal. I know in my neighborhood, it's normal to 75% of the owners. So when a dog does not react, someone will say, oh, look how good that dog is. Look how good your dog is. But when a dog is reacting or yelps or makes a noise, probably think you stepped on their toe, something. I don't know. Most people have no idea what the e-collar is. But if you're worried about judgment from others, you might want to not go in such busy areas. Or if you need to work through some reactive stuff, drive to a different neighborhood and walk around there where no one knows you. This is just something I would maybe recommend. Or I do recommend, because if you're feeling that way, you need to stack moments that make you feel more confident as an owner. And if you're holding back using the e-collar and missing moments because you're worried about what neighbor Susie thinks of you, walk in a different neighborhood. Maybe avoid the busier areas for a bit until you get things under control. I would work outside of a dog park, work out in a park where your dog can observe dogs from further away, that kind of a thing. But yeah, if you're worried about what people think of you, that's a hard one to get over. So those are just little tricks that I use to boost my confidence. Because there's one time I remember there was a dog named Lola. I need a drink of water. Okay. A dog named Lola, a super reactive little piggy. And I took her to the farmer's market and she was super vocal. And I was underwhelming her with the e-collar. And we went to the farmer's market and she reacted towards a dog. She was actually doing pretty good with a lot of things like laying down. But this is why I tell people, unless you've worked through reactivity on the walks using movement is so helpful for reactivity. Don't try to do the stationary stuff yet. It's so hard because if you haven't corrected the reactivity on the walk, where your dog now understands, oh, I can't do that anymore on the walk, or at least it's very minimal. When your dog is laying down and watching dogs pass by, they're probably loading, which is kind of like, when your dog sees a dog ahead and they're just staring and like just revving themselves up when they see the other dog. It's very similar if you take your dog and put them in a down to watch people pass by, which you think you're exposing your dog to the other dogs. And a lot of people think if their dog is reactive, well, maybe if my dog just watches dogs pass by, everything will be fine. But you're missing a big key component that is the most helpful. You haven't corrected the reactivity in a meaningful way. So then it's always going to fizzle up at some point. So with her, she reacted, and I was nervous about what these people at our small farmers market right up the street from our house would think of me. So I didn't use it. I missed a moment, and it's not the end of the world. You can always try again next time. But to me, it just showed me like, oh man, I missed this moment. This would have been a really helpful one to address. I'm not ready for the farmers market kind of a setting. So something to think about. Hopefully that is helpful. Getting her out of the zone when she spots a dog. So it goes to levels. She's so cute. This goes to the levels that you're using. So again, with a dog like this, it's really hard to snap them out of that like intense, and like just a reactive dog, those of you who know it, who have seen it, when your dog is so intense and you know that they want to react, but they're trying not to, and you've kind of corrected for things, but not with a meaningful level. And they see the dog and you're trying to like say no to them. Maybe you're tapping on the e-collar and they keep looking at the dog and it's not clicking. It's not working. And they end up reacting. And you're like, oh, but I was using the e-collar to try and interrupt before. It's your level. So with a dog like that, I would always go to correcting the actual reactivity. Let them react and tap on the e-collar with a more meaningful level. Now, what I do is I press and hold for a second. So that is most helpful because I find that it makes it more uncomfortable, where you can try just with a tap though. So I think I feel comfortable pressing and holding for a second because I've done it, and it's like a second, it's uncomfortable, and then we can move on, and it truly minimizes the reactivity. And that's what I want for you. But I know it's really hard because it was hard for me the first time I did it. So I think though, if you're having a hard time getting your dog out of the zone when they see a dog, you might want to think about doing something like that, letting them react, correcting that with a meaningful level. Again, broken record here. It has to be a higher level than you've used. Okay. So please keep that in mind. What was the other? Yeah. Well, that's what I would say. It's all about levels with stuff like that. What you might want to do if you're struggling with this a lot, set up a virtual call with me. I'll link it in the show notes. But we can talk it through so I can give you better help. Like it's the owner I talked with yesterday, Daniela, who she was messaging me some stuff, and I always try to respond thoughtfully. I can't give you my best in a DM. So she said, okay, I went ahead and set up a virtual call so we could talk more details about this. And I was like, thank you so much, because I really want to help you. There's only so much I can do in a direct message. So there's that. Okay. Underwhelming or, using too harsh of a correction. Okay, so I rarely see that happen. I think this is a huge fear for a lot of you, using too harsh of a correction. I don't think I've ever, maybe one owner in the last 6 years I've talked to who I said, that's way too harsh of a correction. Most of you are totally underwhelming your dogs, which I think your fear of using too harsh of a correction is holding you back from ever dialing up. So I think, because just think about this. So if I am going to correct a dog for popping off a place, the dog knows place, they've been practicing place, they get on place, no problem. But when I introduce distractions, they want to pop off. So if I follow through with a tap at level 40, if she goes to jump off, is that too harsh? Or what if she goes back on place and she stays there, and I bring out the vacuum again and she stays on place? Or was it a meaningful correction? So 40 could seem harsh to some people, but to me, it's all about what does the dog do afterwards? I think from the things that I've told you where I've used 100 with reactive dogs to correct the actual reactivity because it's a more louder moment, we need a louder level, that could seem like too harsh to some people, but it's situational. So I think if you're worried about using too harsh of a correction, I want you to start rethinking your perspective on it. What does your dog need from you? Are you nagging your dog too much? Are you scared to dial up, which is totally normal? And I get it. I've been there too. This is why I'm sharing all of these things, and being so open about levels and all of that, because I'm sure there are people out there who would love to hear, or not love to hear this, but love to bash me as a trainer because I'm talking about this stuff to you. We're not going to focus on those people. But I know it's hard, but I also know it's life-changing when you finally dial up and use a level that's meaningful after weeks and weeks of nagging your dog. It changes everything, and that's what I want for you. So I would change your perspective. Very rarely do I find that an owner is using too harsh of a correction. I think too harsh of a correction would happen if you haven't been clear with your dog about what's expected. Like if I didn't teach her place, and let's say it was day one, I put her on place, and then I correct high for getting off the place. Way too harsh. She doesn't even know what place is. So being fair to your dog, teaching them what you want them to do, teaching them what the new rules are, expectations, and then following through with a correction for breaking those. That's not harsh, that's just being clear. So I think harsh is when your dog does not understand and you're just correcting for things, but you're not being consistent. So something to think about. Oh my gosh, I think I need to do part 3. This is 45 minutes. That's a long time. Okay, we're going to do a part 3. Whoa. Okay, the next one will be all about redirecting. Okay, well, that's a short one actually. If your dog is redirecting on you when you are using the e-collar for reactivity, you need to use a muzzle. Please, oh please, muzzle train your dog. The reason for this is, one, it will help you feel more confident so that you can follow through with the e-collar to correct for things and not be fearful of your dog redirecting. The redirecting thing is a frustration thing. Now, I'm not speaking if your dog is aggressive towards humans, that's totally different. I don't work with dogs like that. But if I'm working with a reactive dog who really wants to react, and if I correct for something and they redirect on me, it's frustration. A dog wants to react. It's like everything inside them is telling them to do this and you're telling them they can't. It's frustrating. And depending on the dog's personality and what kind of dog they are, they can redirect. So I've worked with some dogs that have done this, and what I do is I'm just very clear with a correction with leash guidance, so holding the leash away from me and backwards. But if I'm fearful at all that they might nip and actually make contact with my skin, they'd have a muzzle on. So please, oh please, muzzle. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just, when you're using levels that are more meaningful to really stop a behavior like reactivity, sometimes redirection can happen. Have a muzzle on. But that thing of using the leash away from you, but I also feel like that's more of like a trainer thing. Like if I was working with a big dog who was doing something like that, a muzzle for sure. Smaller dogs are a little bit easier to control. But I also know it can feel bad as an owner when this happens. You can feel like you're doing something wrong and making things worse. It's a frustration thing. So I would be curious what your timing is, what your levels are. So please, oh please, if that's something you're struggling with, let's set up a virtual call and talk it through so that I can help you, feel reassured moving forward. Because it might be a levels and timing thing. Honestly, it depends. All dogs are so different. But okay, the next one will be vocal dogs and the mental part for owners. Yeah, because my voice is like going hoarse, I feel like. Okay, thank you all for being here. We'll do part 3 again soon, maybe super soon. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'll list all of our resources in the show notes, our e-collar starter guide. I'm working on the Reactive Dog Handbook, the new one. That will be out soon. We have our guide to separation anxiety, all about how to use the e-collar to address the separation anxiety, to get your dog to relax in their kennel, which would be so nice. And over on Instagram, follow me at Walking Dog Training, or message me. Let me know you listened. All right, y'all. Bye.